KSYM, San Antonio College Radio. This is Urban Suite D Major, Cheryl Metal. And as promised, joining us for our open mic session this evening, we have Kool of the Visionaries, along with true friend of the Urban Suite era in the studio. Gentlemen, how are you doing tonight?
Well, very good. I'm just tripping out that we're reconnecting after how many years was that?
Man, that was 15 years ago. 15 years ago, pay dues. I lived out in California for about 7 years in the Coachella Valley, and so I just went out to the show. I'm a big fan of the Visionaries, so it's like really cool to be here with Kool. So yeah.
And for real to be up here in San Antonio, because I know I caught your show just driving.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just driving and I'm going, wait, who's playing all this heat right now? I'm like, yes.
I try.
Yes.
I try.
Yes, and that's when I reached out to Cheryl, because I was just like, I gotta find out who this is, what's going on here, and lo and behold, obviously, you're down with a lot of my fam has come through here, and so just to be here, it's an honor anytime you get to connect with the hip hop family in every city, everywhere you go, and this is home to me too. So
yeah,
props to D Major, man. D Major.
Yes,
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, he is the man.
Right.
This is why I stalked him in the first place.
Y'all are funny. Oh man. So let's talk about the beginnings, even before you got into music. How was life in LA?
Well, I grew up in the South Bay of LA, and in the South Bay, there's a big community of Japanese Americans and Hawaiians, and it's very diverse there. So I grew up very comfortable in a very diverse community, and so this was, my grandparents and my parents during World War II, they went to camp. So after they were released, that's where they settled in the South Bay. My dad was from Gardena, and so growing up in Torrance was very, like, we all kind of were family. Like diverse kids would just be like, I guess embracing each other's cultures and being exposed to each other's cultures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those kind of unique situations where it just so happened to be pockets of a lot of, people that I felt very confident of being who I was, and at the same time feeling very different in a way, but different because of not being part of what mainstream society was representing, right? Because as an Asian person, as a Japanese American, you never really saw, representation in media or whatever, like whatever way it was, you just see yourself being portrayed, Asian males obviously always being like the long duck dong and whatever. So as a child, like, we gravitated towards like a Bruce Lee or something, what I mean? Because then you see that and you're like, that's a strong male image, and yet, that's from Hong Kong or from China, you know what I mean? And you watch these kung fu movies and you feel empowered, so. It was a good upbringing because, we grew up listening to soul and funk, because my parents were into jazz and they were into James Brown, and I found out they were cooler than me when I asked them, hey, you ever see James Brown live? They're like, yeah, like 1963 at the Palladium on New Year's Eve. I'm like, no. Wait a minute. They're like, yeah, we just danced to him all night long. But I'm like, okay, now I realize my parents are cooler than me, and I could never be that cool, because I was just like, you saw him live on New Year's Eve and you danced the night away to James Brown. I was like, come on. But they also gave me exposure to all the music through their vinyl. They took us to concerts as kids, even though we didn't have a lot of money. They took us to see Rufus and Chaka Khan and Brothers Johnson in 1978, 79. I was just a kid and didn't realize what all the smoke-filled Greek theater was. We're like, what is that? And my dad says, oh, it's just cigarettes that make you feel drunk. That's how he explained it to us. I was like, that was genius. And my dad was straight edge. He didn't drink. He's like, but he was there for the music. He's like, it's just cigarettes that make you feel drunk. I'm like, okay. But they took us, I was a kid, and I fell in love just watching Louis Johnson on the bass, seeing Chaka Khan, and just being blown away. They took us to Earth, Wind and Fire concerts at the Forum. So I had a lot of exposure. So that's what I think where my love for music. My dad got our first stereo because my mom was tutoring someone from Sanyo. There was a lot of Japanese companies in Gardena, and my mom would tutor the kids how to speak English. And they would give us hookups, and so my dad's like, I'm gonna buy a stereo, because we only had like a hi-fi speaker, so we bought a stereo. And then he's like, listen to this, and he put on Marvin Gaye Live, and we closed our eyes, we're like, it feels like someone's playing the music in the room. Like, that was like, and it was magic, right? And so having those moments as a child just were like, that just made me just fall in love with music. Absolutely, just couldn't stop listening to it, couldn't stop wanting to play the piano. I never had lessons, I just played and just started DJing because I just wanted to emulate the sounds of Grandmaster Flash, whatever, and just scratch the records, and that's how I got into hip hop. So yeah,
man. You know, that was going to be my next question. You know, what was your first hip hop influence?
Well, my first influence was my brother was doing a talent show, and he was like the unknown comic where he had a bag over his head and he would tell jokes, and people didn't realize how funny he was. But in that the talent show in 8th grade, these brothers, the Smith brothers, came out and they started locking, right? And I never seen, like, I would kind of heard of it, but then they started, you know, doing a robot and jumping over brooms. They were like going off, and I was like, what is that? Like, that was like, to see something that was even before popping, right? I was a kid. I was like, so my brother, I was like in 3rd grade. I was like, what is this? And then I was at like this Buddhist church dance, and they were asking me to play records because there was no DJs, so they would hand me records. And these cats from Carson were like, hey, play Barkade's Holy Ghost. We're going to do something. I go, I bet you they're going to do that thing. And they came out and they started locking. They weren't as good, but they were still doing it. And I was like, that's what got me into, like, when I first started seeing popping, this kid in 6th grade was doing stuff. And so you guys showed me how to do that. And come to find out, he was the cousin of those same Smith brothers. He was the younger cousin. And then his other cousin, Kevin Mitchell, was like in my PE class. And he was 1 year older, but he's in my PE class. And he started teaching me how to pop, and I was just hooked. And that's how I got into it, the dance aspect. I wasn't that good, but once I started DJing, I don't know why, it was natural for me because of the rhythm. And I was like, immediately, like, I picked up on it. And my brother's friend had bought a pair of turntables and I think it was a Pyramid mixer or Gemini, and he didn't know how to use it. He's like, you take it, because you do that scratching thing. So I took it home and I started making mixtapes in 7th grade, and and then I started getting hired. Like, all these older dudes that were DJs that didn't know how to do anything, they were like, come through and do that thing that you do. And I would just like take Planet Rock or whatever, and I would just scratch, and they would pay me like $200. So I didn't have to sell drugs. Like, they were making, like, you know, DJing back then, they were making like $500-600. They'd be like, here's $200 cash. So every weekend I would go and make this cash, and I didn't have to sell drugs or anything. I was like making cash because of the music. So I was like, you know, my girlfriend was getting Louis Vuitton purses. My girlfriend in, you know, 9th grade was getting Louis Vuitton purses because I had cash on me. That was all legit from DJing. So it was kind of like naturally rewarding to me. So that's how I got into hip hop, really. Like, first the dance. I used to try to, I did art too, but I never was crazy enough to, like my friends, I would just go bomb up places. But, you know, I still did art, and I think that's just how hip hop was at that age, because I'm a, you know, kind of an older cat. So I got into obviously beatboxing and rapping too, like, because we would bag on each other at lunch. We would make rhymes about each other. Then we would do them over instrumentals, and that's how we naturally we all could rap, we all could DJ, we all could b-boy, we all could pop, we all could do graffiti, and it's like all aspects of it. We just embraced it all. So that's how I got into it, basically.
Wow. Let's go ahead and get into some music. Hey, y'all, stay tuned. More coming up. We've got the Visionaries right now in the good. Playing right now. Yeah.
That's right.
Let's go ahead. Keep it locked, y'all. This is Urban Sweet KSYM, San Antonio College Radio.